Banter, episode 4. I'm Matt, your host.
Big Red, how are we?
Good,
Deals are
mate.
here.
And we've got producer Timmy, as always.
How you going, mate?
Timmy.
Still not allowed on camera after the incident.
No, thanks, boys. Good to be back.
And even better this week, we've got our first guest live in studio. Special guest, former Queensland cricketer, Aaron Nye. Errol, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks, boys.
Welcome, Nysey. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming to the Sweatbox. That is Beers and Banter HQ.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me.
That's actually what I wanted to call the show, the Sweaty Box, but it didn't.
Probably already used.
Yeah, didn't get off the ground. Well,
What a weekend.
massive again. I say it every week, but
Gets better.
not a lot of sleep getting done and not a lot of jobs getting done around the house. I can tell you now. Big episode. We're going to cover off the NRL, the AFL, a little bit of rugby. Apparently, there's some news going on in the rugby circles. F1, V8s, UFC. We'll touch on the NBA. Obviously, massive day for Game of Thrones fans. Winter is here. Golf, and we might do a bit of cricket with Nysey. Science update, Timmy.
Black holes this week.
Yes.
Big week with science, Matty.
That
Big
is going to
week.
keep the listeners right till the very end. Thanks, mate. Righto, let's get into it. Broncos. I told you last week, they're done.
It's getting close to the end for them, isn't it?
Yeah,
They're under a
smoked.
bit of pressure.
Oh, guys, I don't know about that.
They couldn't.
Nysey's an
Early
avid Broncos
call.
man.
Oh, sorry.
early call.
Should have sorted that out before we started.
Pretty sure they don't play finals in April.
No, they don't. But
But it's not only the Broncos. What about the Panthers? The two teams that a lot of guys tipped to make the grand final at the start of the year, both in the bottom 8 already.
the Panthers come up against the Titans. That
They
was their
did play the
problem.
best team in the comp on the weekend. So
Watch them go on a run. So what? Anything notable out of the Broncos game? It was that long ago. I can't remember. I've watched that much sport this weekend.
Not completing their sets, ball control.
Couldn't get
just
the job done.
basic errors.
Yeah.
They're not gelling, are they?
They're getting out-muscled in the first 15 minutes. They're doing a lot of defence. It's they're getting gassed early, and it's just hard to compete for the rest of the game when you're constantly tackling. That's all
Yeah.
they seem to be doing. They don't and they're dropping a few balls and early on, and then not completing. So makes it really difficult. I don't know how you can sustain that, and I think there's a few issues too. They don't have a leader in the pack, and their halves are struggling to guide them around the field, which has always been a problem.
Well, they're certainly a long way off the mark when you look at the Storm and the Roosters.
What about
I think
There's a lot
everyone's
of-
Clearly
everyone's
the two
off that.
standout teams.
a lot of pressure on Boyd? But like they're blaming their losses on Boyd. But is he really? He's not taking you forward. But is there merit to that? Do you think? Like they're gonna? Should he slot into the 6 and maybe put Milford to the fullback position?
I don't think Milford's going as good as he used to, is he?
No, overpaid.
2 years ago he was pretty good, but I think he's
He's not living up to the $1 million price tag, that's for sure. But I think too, if you have a look at all the other spines in the competition, the fullback also acts as another 6 and provides some continuity in the attack, and they're not getting it from Boyd. To me, it looks like he's a yard slow. I mean, he's a turnstile in defence, as good as Dylan was when he was playing AFL from memory.
I didn't have much
There,
defence.
there's been a few highlights there that have sort of shown up him not putting his body on the line. But I just think it's tough. He's had a good career. Tough.
Raiders
tough
are the
criticism.
one that I'm impressed with so far. Normally slow starter in the years gone by, but this year
Who have they played? But
I watched them yesterday. They were solid.
they're a pretty good team.
They were solid.
Yeah, right.
Manly's,
4-1.
What about Manly? Manly have had
they
some
was
wins.
they
Manly
weren't
are
supposed to be any
surprised.
good
They
this
were
year.
supposed to be terrible.
Manly and the Tigers were bottom 8 sides
Yeah.
at the start of the year.
Madge. What about our beloved Titans got up?
They did.
Huge.
What they did.
They started to look the goods on the weekend, and watch them go on a run now.
Played with a bit of passion finally.
Yeah, and then it was still on the line at the end of the game. They still kept turning up.
Yeah.
Some would say a controversial penalty try, but I watched it back again last night, and it's.
Penalty try.
I don't
every
think
day
there's
of the
anything
week.
controversial about it. I think James Mahoney's the only one that thought it wasn't a try.
Yeah.
He likes to argue about it.
He was still salty on
Loves
the
a
Matty
whinge.
John show last night too.
he?
He was,
Yeah.
yeah, he was still sooking.
What about one point out of rugby league that I thought was interesting? Josh Maguire only got a $3,000 fine for an eye gouge.
Yeah, I think that's
Did
pretty
you see
grubby,
that?
and I think he's got it in his game, and I think he should know better as a bloke that's blind in one eye. Keep your hands out of your opposition face, like fellow Queenslander. I thought that was rubbish. To be honest, he doesn't need that in his game. He's good enough footy player without that bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, $3,000 fine's not going to hurt him, is it?
No, not when Wallace gets 2 weeks for a solid tackle. Like that'll be on the highlight reel.
Good old fashioned hit.
Yeah, that's
That's
So-
the aspect of the game that's gone, though, isn't it?
Yeah. The other big news in NRL, Greg Inglis retired this afternoon.
That is massive. Sad that not all champions get to go out the way they want to, but geez, he's been going at it for a long time.
He has, and I think it's been coming for a while. His body hasn't been good for some time now.
Not just that, I think he's had mental health issues too, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's had off-field issues as well.
Not being able to stay at the peak of his game, which if you're an athlete.
Well, I don't really care about South, but who plays in the centres for the Maroons this year?
And who captains?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know.
Daly Cherry Evans, mate.
No, a mate of mine texted me last night and he said, you better not throw DCE up as an option for captain.
It'd have to be Munster, wouldn't it? Just get him blooded in now.
Yeah,
because he's
maybe.
going to be there for a long time. I
Maybe.
think he's
Not a
the
bad
best
call.
player in the comp.
Righto. Knights not living up to the hype. They've now gone 4-1, 1-4. One
Few
from
injuries.
five.
Few injuries have cost them though.
Yeah.
Give them a couple more weeks. I think they'll come good.
Is Nathan Brown's been able to say for the last 3 or 4 years, hey, I haven't got the roster, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's sort of got some good cattle there. And they're
Well, they
still-
recruited better than anyone at the end of last year.
Yeah.
I mean, their list is good. Should be a top 4 side.
Yeah, so the Dragons thumped the Bulldogs, doing the Titans a favour last night.
They did. It's good to see the Dogs get beaten, isn't it?
Must say.
Well, they were supposed to be going for the spoon, not us. So I do like the fact that we jumped up to 14.
So we've got the
after
Knights
one
this
win.
week, so we should string another one
Yeah.
back-to-back
We'll-
wins, you'd think.
We'll belt them.
I think you'll find that Dean Pay will go before Nathan Brown.
They just renewed his
possibly.
contract, didn't they?
Did they?
Didn't
Oh, they
they?
did too. Actually, 3 years.
He's got no players.
No,
He
they're terrible.
hasn't got the cattle.
They paid a few blokes way overs, and then they freed up some money, but then everyone else was bought, wasn't it?
And then Kieran Foran's injured as well, too, isn't he?
Yep.
Wow, I actually watched a bit of AFL yesterday for the first time.
Good boy.
And then
Next,
just,
About time.
yeah. And then Suns were down with a couple of minutes to play. I had to hop up and do something. And then when I sat back down the couch, apparently they'd won in exciting fashion.
Yeah, it was only 13 or 14 seconds left on the clock. One of the young blokes snapped on his left, his non-dominant leg, and straight through for a goal. They won by 3 or 4 points, I think it was, in the end. It actually
Yeah, nice.
wasn't a great game, but win's a win.
Few out there at Carrara.
Probably 25 people, I guess. Wasn't a massive crowd, but they're only playing Carlton, to be fair. So, but you can't do any more than win. They're 3-1 now. So,
Q1 clash this weekend, apparently. Is that right?
no, it's Brisbane Collingwood this week.
I've had a
Thursday night.
shocker, sorry. It's that close.
Did
Brisbane.
research that.
It's in a couple of weeks.
Brisbane's showing some
Brisbane,
form too.
yeah, that Brisbane were going good until they came up against Essendon on the weekend and got flogged. But be interesting to see how they bounce back against the Pies. Big game on Thursday night.
Where's that one at the Gabba?
That's at the Gabba. Yep.
Yeah, righto.
Well, I actually think we might have seen the grand final preview on Saturday. Geelong v GWS was a ripper of a game. Only 3 points in it.
Oh, spewing, I missed it.
Probably there'll be a replay during the week on Foxtel. You tune in and have a look.
Yeah, I'll catch that. What about your Crows? For all the South Australians listening.
The Crows are they're up against the Suns this week, so it's a win-win game for me. Can't lose that one.
So you probably wear your Suns jersey and your Crows hat or something
I'll
like that.
see who wins first, and then I'll drag that one out of the cupboard.
Righto. What about rugby? Is there,
much
anything
rugby.
going on in rugby?
Yeah, the Reds got thumped. They were overseas. Yeah, no, they won the week before. They actually played the Stormers at home the week before and actually had a really good win.
don't
Wasn't
know.
the best of games, but
I feel like there was another headline over the weekend. I just can't quite put my
I
finger
saw
on it.
something on social media.
well, 39,000 other people made a comment on it too. I think
39,000. Well,
39,000.
that's right.
Is
Israel
he?
Folau, Goose.
Gone.
Well, it
Gone.
looks like it, yeah.
Gone. So the ARU's come out this afternoon with a breach notice.
Right.
I also heard Michael Checker say today that he will not pick him. So
So he's
you
done.
put those two together and career over.
And if you read between the lines of Hooper, the captain, Wallabies captain, he's also saying, "Sorry, I don't know if I can condone this. It's not good for the kids."
So where to now? AFL said they don't want him. NRL doesn't want him. What does he do overseas?
Starting a church, I heard.
Yeah,
Not even joking.
or a cult.
It seems I don't know. Seems odd. Seems different to the learnings. I went to a private school for a couple of years there in the middle of my education, and it
Doesn't
seems at
show.
odds with the message that I delivered with tolerance and God loved everybody equally. So we'll just leave that there. Eh?
Yeah, look, I mean, he's obviously he's someone that a lot of young kids will look up to.
Yeah.
And Nizzy can probably touch on it, but these guys are all trained on social media, what not to say, what to say.
It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. It's still there.
Well,
the post
still,
is still there
correct.
4 days later.
And he's
it's
come out
measured.
and said that he stands by what he said.
Do you know what's weird? I saw an article, and apologies, I can't credit the writer, the author, but he was actually on the front cover for the Gay Rugby magazine 4 or 5 years ago. So what's happened from going from being an advocate to posting stuff like that? What about the rest of the people he insulted?
Yeah, there's a
The
long list.
alcoholics and
Yeah.
he insulted everybody. He didn't miss.
Well, and then there's now, Gary Ablett and one of the Carlton players actually liked the comment on Instagram. So now there's a bit of scrutiny on them for obviously liking what was said, liking the comment.
Yeah, there you go. Social media.
Costly for him. There's a lot of bills that he's not going
It's
to
a
be
minefield.
checking.
Yeah, what did he still have 3 years left on his contract?
I think it just got renewed. They wanted to hold on to him, and it's a World Cup year too. So who do we pick? Who does Australian rugby fill in that hole? But I'll make a statement. I think we haven't got the best out of him. I don't think he delivered much, and whether that was in a poor side, I don't know. But I'm not sure that if the ball's not in the air, he really wasn't that much value. He got pushed out in the wing and Kurtley Bill was pushed to fullback. I don't think they really knew how to use him that well. So,
Career over.
opportunity for someone else now.
Righto. Moving on. F1. Finally, Ricardo was able to qualify where he's supposed to, the best of the rest. Out qualified Hulkenberg in 7th, and then he pretty much finished best of the rest. So there was a bit of action early on in the first couple of laps, but it was a fairly boring race after that. But hopefully some good signs. Hulk retired again, so not good for the Renault engines.
Yeah, they're in trouble, aren't they?
Yeah.
MGUNK.
So where did Ricardo finish? 7th?
He finished 7th, and I reckon he would have been pretty nervous for the last 10 to 15 laps.
He had Perez on his tail for pretty much the whole race. He was a second half. He was in and out of DRS zone. So, pretty interesting.
Well, that's pretty much going to be a stock standard position for him throughout the year, isn't it? 7th?
Pretty
When you
much,
got two Mercedes.
unless Max takes a couple of people out further up the chain, that's pretty much as good as they're going to expect to finish.
There'll be a talking point later in the year between the two Ferrari drivers because Leclerc got told to surrender his spot to Vettel. And then he was not very happy about that because he felt he was the fastest car anyway. So, and he made some interesting comments on his radio, but that'll blow up before the end of the year, which is great.
Seb won't like that.
Seb, yeah, he's a sook.
Getting some of his own back.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him. I'd love to see Leclerc pass him when he's.
He's only a 4-time world champion because he had a rocket under his ass for 4 years. It was by far the best car.
I think last year we saw that the mental game. Hamilton's got his number because every time that the pressure was really on, Seb crumbled. And Hamilton, Iceman.
And he knew how to put him under pressure too. That's what I like about Lewis. He's awesome.
V8s quickly. Mustangs back on top. Fabian Coulthard takes his first win in 2019. The first round they've tried no pit stops during safety car, so that was interesting. Not a lot of other news. I didn't get to see as much of that as I would have liked over the weekend, but yeah, the Ford's dominating this year.
Changes to the suspension rule is causing Holden a whole heap of grief. They don't know how to set up their cars properly. Move the rear suspension.
Shane Van Gisbergen finish.
I don't know. Did I see a wheel come off Jamie Winkup's car?
Yeah.
You do not see mistakes like that out of Triple Eight.
No.
That's bizarre.
That was on Saturday. So
that's big.
They're struggling at the moment, the Holdens.
Bit of UFC out of the weekend. Didn't see a lot of it, but I got to see Israel Adesanya, who's a Kiwi, or fighting out of New Zealand, beat Kevin Gastelum in a cracker. And that's now set up a match with Robert Whittaker, which, according to Dana White in the press conference afterwards, he's said that must be in Australia, and it probably will be in a stadium, not an arena. They expect that to be huge for the title. Max Holloway was the main event on that card, and he was outclassed by Dustin Poirier. Connor's beaten both of those guys in his career. So he's
retired, isn't he?
Yeah, keep saying that.
Allegedly.
Keep hearing it.
He's waiting for his shares to come through, but I saw Khabib posted He's waiting for his now, so that'll be interesting. They want shares in the company, but I think until those guys are active again, that division's sort of on standby. Soccer, I've got no time for soccer this weekend. There's so much happening. I'm going to just blow on straight through to...
Coomera under 8's had a bye, just following on from last week.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get much other news come in.
Logan had a win, I think.
I think the Logan Lightning won their
7-2.
FFA game. Shout out, Wall. Ben Symonds booed by his home crowd.
Yeah, what's doing there?
So allegedly they're supposed to be the roughest crowd on their own players, and they've been on a bit of a they've been without a win for a while.
Well,
so
he's carried them for 18 months, though. To be fair, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't appreciate it anyway.
And another controversy: one of the players having his mobile phone on the bench, checking phones, which is against NBA
in that same
rules.
game.
Same game, Abib. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was interesting.
Massive repercussions.
Forex Gold sponsor this week.
Yeah, I'm still going on this one.
Nothing better than
I'll
a
catch
gold. It is the best.
Yeah, these are a special edition for you, Nosey. So we try and do a different beer each week.
Mother's milk.
Until we get a sponsor, we'll continue trialling some different ones.
Who made the most runs at West Cricket Club?
Oh, I know this one. It wasn't me.
Who was it?
Recently got passed.
Aaron Nye.
Well, it's no secret. It is the biggest day of the year. Something you might know about a bit, Nosey. Biggest day of the year for Foxtel. Game of Thrones returns. Winter is here.
Massive.
House Stark.
Can't wait.
You need to get on board, mate. It is huge.
I missed the bus.
So many theories going around. Spoilers, if you're not up to date, stop listening now. But who is the Night King? What does he want? And what's John going to do when he finds out he's plugging his cousin or his auntie, whatever's going on there? It's a bit out there.
Moving on.
We'll move on. Here's my hot tip. John is a Baratheon. There, I said it. Golf. Apparently there's some golf played over the weekend. You guys might know a little bit about that.
Massive night.
Huge.
Tiger.
He's back.
Arguably the best comeback of all time, isn't it?
It'd have to be, wouldn't it? I mean, not that was only 2 or 3 years ago. The bloke could hardly walk. He's had 4 or 5 back surgeries.
He's got a fuse back. It's his lower vertebrae.
He came back. I mean, he had the yips there at one stage with his chipping. Literally could not hit a chip. The driver couldn't hit the driver on the golf course. A lot of guys questioned if he'd ever play golf again, let alone win a tournament, let alone win a major. And he's done both in the last 6 months. Just the way he got it into the clubhouse last night, the last 6 holes, he was just pretty much hit it in every spot he needed to.
Do you reckon he had their number? Like once he was in the hunt, there were some names that you threw out last week when we were doing our preview, and they didn't even feature. They weren't even close.
Yeah, I didn't do real good with the picks, actually.
No.
Paul Casey and Justin Rose didn't really.
But even...
They MC hammered. They didn't even make the cut, mate.
Rory
was disappointing. Just never got it going.
Spieth.
He's been battling.
Started bad, but came good in the last couple of rounds.
I had Stenson as a bit of a dark horse. He played really well at the World Match Play, and he just didn't quite get it firing, although he played well today.
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said last week, there's a lot of guys that play Augusta well, and there's a lot of guys that traditionally don't play there that well. And it's normally the same guys.
It's the ball strikers.
Most years that are up around the mark. But no one plays it better than Tiger.
What was the talk leading into it that the Augusta, or the golf club were complaining about how far the ball's carrying, and if the manufacturers don't do something about it, they will. Well, What's that all about?
So, basically each year they need to do something to make the course more, basically toughen up the golf course, because the guys are getting better and better every year. They're hitting it further and further every year. So this year they brought a tee back, the 5th. Then they brought back maybe 50 yards.
Go back to wooden clubs.
And they also brought the 2 fairway bunkers on the 5th back.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
The reality is it's not just Augusta having this issue. Every golf course in the world.
Go back to wooden heads.
Well, that's what's killing it. Technology is killing these golf courses. I mean, we don't have enough land. The golf courses don't have enough land to make the course longer to suit how far these guys are hitting it.
And I'm hearing they'll move the 13th tee next year back to make the 13th longer off the tee. to make it more of a challenge, to lay up or hit the.
They had a lot of rain too leading into the week of the tournament and during the week of the tournament, which always makes the course softer.
So they could just go hard.
Yeah, so these guys they're throwing it at the flag, whereas in years gone by, it'll normally bounce. You'll get a big bounce, and it makes it a little bit harder. So,
but you have a look at it was only 13 under. I mean, you have a look
true.
back, 15 years ago, and that was around the mark. If you got to 12 under, they generally you're going to be there or thereabouts late Sunday.
So I did a bit of stalking on Instagram. Is it true you caddied for Adam Scott in 2003?
Not in the main tournament, but in the Par 3 tournament, which is on the Wednesday.
That's pretty
Tell
cool.
us that story, Errol. It's a good story.
It's a very good story. I was actually on my way to England to play cricket and stopped off. Adam Scott invited me over, and as you may be aware that Dylan's been good mates with him for a long time. I have as well, and he asked
a bit of a name dropper.
Yeah, he is.
He likes to leave him lying around.
Anyway, I got invited to the Par 3, and Adam's caddy at the time, Tony Navarro, took me to the caddy shack. We got dressed up in the overalls.
That is unreal.
Anything under them?
Yeah, I wore just shorts and a t-shirt, mate. Some of the caddies don't wear anything. Stevie Williams didn't wear anything. He was bareback the whole way down because they're thick. And anyway, we get to the practice green, and we're about 20 minutes out, and Butch Harmon was there because he was coaching Adam at the time, and he said, "Mate, I need a drink." And I sort of said, "Mate, I'm not his regular caddy, so you can get your own." And then Scotty turned around and goes, "No, mate, you're the caddy now, so you go and get the drinks. Hurry up." I was like, "Oh, righto." Sprayed me. So there was a little drinks cart about 50 metres away. I went and grabbed that and came back, got the boys the drinks. They started walking the tee, and I was actually a little bit nervous. I was like, there's about 50,000 people around the little Par 3, and it's a magic little...
That looks like more fun than the actual tournament, the Par 3 day.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Cool. And then Scotty's first shot, he knifes it into the crowd and hits someone. In tradition, you're just supposed to give him some pennies or some nickels or whatever, and I actually had some in my pocket because he didn't bring any. I was like, "Mate, you're the millionaire.
Shock me.
You're the millionaire here, and I'm having to pay for your mistakes." I said,
gold.
"Maybe you should just let me hit it." Anyway, we got to the 7th hole, and Luke List, the amateur, actually had a hole in one. That was awesome. And at that time, I turned around to Scotty and I said, "Mate, I've got an appreciation for this gig. It's tough." I sort of pulled the bag off my arm, and I was the only one out there carrying the full kit, the full staff bag, all the clubs and everything. And I was like, "Mate, this is ridiculous. It's a lot heavier for these guys to carry around for 5 days as a joke." Anyway, we get down to the 9th. I didn't get to hit a shot. I was a bit disappointed about that. I'll have to have a word to him. I've never actually brought that one up.
Didn't get to skim it across the 13th there or whatever it is? No?
No, that's on the 16th on the normal 16th. Play, yeah. But they usually let someone, their caddy hit the ball on the 9th.
No putting?
No putting, nothing. Cleaning clubs and didn't get a gig. But threw our clubs on the back of a cart, drove up the hill towards the clubhouse. And back in that day, there was a putting green, a practice green in front of the clubhouse. And Butch and Tony were waiting for me up there. And anyway, I put the bag down. I've gone, "Right, Tony, you can have the bag back. I'm not doing that anymore. It's a joke. That's heavy, ridiculous." Scotty unzips the back of the bag, and 2 full bags of range balls fall out of the back of the bag. And he's like, "What are you doing, mate? Trying to steal golf balls from Augusta? This is, you can't do that." And I was like, "You're a joke." Anyway, my cricket coach rings me the next week, and I tell him the story. And then the old back page sort of, Banter in the Courier Mail had it featured. So, yeah, it was pretty good time. Amazing place, Augusta.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Never to caddy again.
Never to caddy again. At least I made the cut. That's all I can say.
I'm 0-1.
Well, he goes on a bit about like him and Adam are best mates, but to me, like he would have picked his best mate for that kick, I would have thought.
Well,
sore point. See that?
No. I've had one go at caddying and it wasn't real good.
No, didn't have a lot.
From one.
I can actually tell you, I stood right next to Adam's ball at Coolum on the 5th, and Scotty was there looking at the ball, and the light wasn't great. It was in the rough. I had a little chat to him. I said, "Where's your caddy, mate?" And he was 50 metres back. When the caddy finally come up, and he was reading out the numbers, he was like, "You've got 400 metres to the hole."
It was a pretty hilly hole, that one.
It was dead flat.
He was in
a world of hurt after 5 holes.
Well,
Sweating.
We were 4 over after 5, so it was hard to get motivated after that.
Yeah, well, clearly you weren't giving him the right numbers either.
Anyway, yeah,
Moving
Tiger,
on.
look, that was, it as Nigel said, it's probably the greatest
I
sporting
think
achievement.
I found the key to Tiger's success. It was going to be in the science update, but it's just something I found online this week. Hopefully the people at home can't see it, but if you can, I apologise now. But I just think maybe this machine's gone. Could be the key. So a Chinese company's come up with a sperm extractor for people that aren't willing to masturbate when they're going for a sperm sample in the hospital. I just thought maybe is that the key to Tiger's success?
Maybe he ordered one.
He looked very relaxed this week. What do you think? Thoughts?
Should they be banned?
Yeah, that could be performance enhancing.
Well, he's been in hospital a few times. He's had a few operations. Maybe just channeling his in a hospital visit.
Twitter credit for that.
Not sure why you found that online, Red.
At Angry Man TV. I think that was.
Were you looking for one?
That was a Joe Rogan retweet. No, I thought that joke was going to go better, Timmy. Oh well, you get that.
What about World Cup cricket squad announced today? Well, we got Nicey in the studio.
Big news.
So a couple of big admissions: Peter Hanscom and Josh Hazlewood. Probably Peter Hanscom bigger than Hazlewood, I would have thought.
Hazelwood's never really been a feature in the Australian one-day side.
No.
He's more of a fill-in when blokes need to be rested or whatever, and he's probably lacks a yard of pace to be a good one-day bowler, I reckon.
Well, probably the biggest talking
and a
point.
good change-up.
The big talking point: Smith and Warner back in. How are they going to fit back into the side's culture?
Very
are the players
interesting.
going to take them back?
From what I understand, they'll take one of them back very easily, and the other
Smith.
one not so much.
So, obviously, we haven't really got into your background just yet, but you've been in those change rooms. You've been in that environment. You can't tell me the bowlers didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, look,
Mitch Stark swinging it around corners.
Yeah.
And he goes, geez, the ball looks good.
Well,
Or not.
look, I'll say no because there's so many times where the bowlers will have their own meetings and they have their own discussions, and then the captains will have their own discussions, and then they'll just basically tell you what's going on.
Yeah, right.
And, within that team, I think when you get to that level, people know their roles in the team. And from what I understand, Davey Warner, and I got this from a player that played a lot of Australian cricket with him, he had one responsibility, and that was to be a pest and to be that person.
He was good at it.
And he was good at it. Hence why he liked to get under people's skin, against the opposition. But for him to direct another player to do that, and Smith knew about it and didn't stop it, I think that's where the buck stops, because from my understanding is that the bowlers don't want to have anything to do with him, because he was basically saying, they knew about it when clearly they didn't. And
Do you reckon, did Smith know about it?
I had to. And I think he admitted to it.
Well, from all reports, he heard him talking about the change room and
Didn't do anything about it.
Turned a blind eye.
Yeah, that's rough. So the squad, I don't know what's happened to my squad here. I've got Warnie's squad.
I like listening to Warnie. I think Warnie's...
Maxwell, Stoinis, Carey, Cummins, Stark, Richardson, Zampa, Plush, Marsh, Lyon, Turner, Coulter, Nile.
Well, the one that Warnie's been on about all summer is Darcy Short. He's obviously a big fan of his.
Understandably, he drops bombs. He just hits it so big, and
He's not in the squad.
No, he can change the game.
No.
No Chris Lynn.
No Linny. I think Linny's fielding would be his biggest admission.
Yeah.
And the fact that he probably didn't take his opportunities when he played for Australia, he really didn't get going. And I think too, there's definitely with him and Short, there's a IPL issue there, and the fact that they don't feature in the long version of the game, the guys that play all three forms, Australian contract wise and in just endorsements, are exposed to a greater money earner. So people like Lenny and Darcy Short, who are only going to be 2020 specialists, need to basically work the 2020 market.
Yeah.
The one that's really surprised me, I've probably got to eat my words, but Stoinis. I've never been a rap until probably the last 6 to 12 months. He's arguably probably the best all-rounder in the world.
That's interesting. I think you've got a guy in England.
Maxwell's not. Maxwell's on par.
Maxwell's bowling's poor.
But Stoinis is a pretty valuable part of the team now.
Oh, absolutely. You look at the reason why he's a good bowler is he can bowl at the death. Very hard thing to do. And he's also got multiple variations, and he can hit a big ball. So
sounds like you, Errol.
Yeah, and his best mates with Daniel Ricciardo too. I noticed.
Yeah, same hairdresser.
Yeah,
Both
terrible.
shocking haircuts.
Anyway,
I think we've got a caller on the line.
Before we dive more into Errol and his career,
Yeah.
something that we thought we might start this week is we're going to call it Jake's Jaffa. We've got a bit of a celebrity tipster. Well, he'd call himself a celebrity anyway, but Junior Jake Hannon is each week going to supply what we call a Jaffa or a moral of the week. We're going to start with $100 and we're going to let it ride each week. With the plan being that when we get to $1,000, we'll donate it to a junior sporting club.
Junior sporting club, that sounds good.
So we'll let the winnings ride each week. Junior will supply his moral of the week, and the club that we're going to start off with is Coomera Soccer Club. So I think we've got Junior on the line. You there, Junior?
Hi, boys. How you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Jakey Hannon.
Hope you've done some research, mate. I don't want to put another 100 in next week.
No, mate, this is a moral this week, boys. I'm very confident. I mean, I don't pick too many losers. I'm on a streak.
You know this is recorded.
We will be we'll be winning this week, boys.
What do you got for us, mate? What do we got? What are we on?
Boys, this week we're going early too, so we'll stock the kitty up nice and early. Thursday night at 7:30 up at the Gabba. I think the Lions have played well, but I think they've probably come back a little bit into the pack after 2 wins and the loss last weekend. And I think the line for Collingwood, the minus 9.5 at $1.90.
Minus 9.5.
Yeah, is the go with the Pies. Hate to do it to the Lions, but I think that should set us off well.
Collingwood minus 9.5 at $1.90.
Yeah.
Like it, Junior. Like it.
So # gamble responsibly. Is it we've got to say stuff like that, or
Or sponsor,
I think so.
sports bet,
Yeah.
Neds, someone,
yeah,
something.
still chasing a sponsor. Just saying.
Anyway, Junior, we'll get that bet on, and hopefully we'll have 190 to let it ride next week.
Good luck, boys.
All right, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Talk next week.
Appreciate it.
See you, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
So before we go a bit deeper into your career, I just want to go back to kit bags. When does this 15-man squad assemble?
So they'll be 6 weeks out.
So-
They'll get out there pretty early. They'll play some practice games. It's a long tour. It'll be nearly 3 months. I think you'll be on the road.
How awkward is day one when they show up, get the uniforms, arrive at the team hotel, first team meeting, Dave Warner walks in, Steve Smith walks in.
I did read somewhere that they've actually got plans around easing them back into the
They've
squad.
already had a few beers with the team or something.
Yeah, they went to Dubai. They went over and when they were preparing against Pakistan, they spent some time with the team, probably to have it out in the dressing room. I'd say they would have had it. They would have
already had that.
Yeah,
beef.
yeah, that's been done. It's done and dusted now. Whatever's happening, I think you'll find they've kissed and made up, and everyone's hugging and slapping asses again. But they're definitely, they'll be keen to get them back in the side. Warner's form, and even Steve Smith's at the IPL when they played their few games was electric. In fact, I like the fact that Warner's got a bit of a Tiger mentality at the moment, where people said, "Oh no, you'll never come back, and we don't want you," and all that sort of stuff. But he's gone out there and he's got a point to prove now, and he's that sort of bloke. I mean, I remember playing against him when he'd only played 1 or 2 games for New South Wales, and he was fair stuck into everyone.
Arrogant.
So he was arrogant, and he knew his ability.
He thrives off it, doesn't he?
But he does, and that's what gets him going.
But when they put him on the leash, he sort of goes into his shell. So Australia wants the best out of Dave Warner, but then they don't want the side of him that really fires up. So that's a sort of.
And he's got a couple of soft points, doesn't he? Like his wife is a topical conversation, always has been.
Is that off limits on the cricket pitch, do you think, family?
Oh, look, it is, and it should be, and it is in the new code of conduct that came out probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But before that, it was do whatever you like. I've heard some beauties.
Anyone want to share?
I think there's the Mars bar on the wicket is a pretty good one for me and Healy against Regina Ranatunga. You've got Glenn McGrath who said he'd share his biscuit with someone, and he said, "Yeah, I shared it with your wife last night." So there's always been some bad ones, but
yeah, righto. I thought the best one ever was Steve Waugh. You've dropped the World Cup.
That was against Herschel Gibbs. You just dropped the World Cup, and he was right, and we beat him on the last ball of that game.
So while we're on the topic, let's get serious for a second. Ball tampering. Ever had a go?
No, mate.
Come on, Wink. There's no one watches this show. It doesn't. It's not
Mate,
gonna get out there.
He didn't need to. He just chucked it.
Yeah, here we go. Look, I played in some pretty amazing sides in Queensland. We had Bickle, Kasperwitz, Ashley Nofke, Joey Dawes. There was a few blokes that really
Just lost something there.
we didn't need to do a lot to get the ball going because they were seriously talented bowlers, and we had a group of players that we didn't really need to worry about that. We won every game we played, which was good.
Sorry about that. Yeah, righto.
And to be honest, and I think we mentioned this off air beforehand, the Pakistanis used to use one of these things, and they used to put a slither or a cut in the ball, which aerodynamically, when the air's running across one side, it catches that and then makes it move. A sandpaper's not going to do much. It really isn't. So it was laughable from a cricketer community that he's even asked him to do that.
So not only did they embarrass the nation, they just weren't even doing it properly.
No. There's
Didn't go hard enough.
Yeah. There's no benefit, no great benefit to that.
Yeah.
At that point, but I just found it ridiculous. But the question has to be asked: is were they doing it? Was it just that they got caught and they'd been doing it previously? But to me, it was just got caught at that moment. But they probably tried other things.
So that my understanding is that they were honing in on Warner because of all the tape on his hands from the previous match. Is that right?
So the South Africans were claiming that the Australians traditionally we've never been great at reverse swing.
Yeah.
We've always had to rely on a good spinner like Warney to come in and do the dirty work. But they were talking about it the game before how we got the ball to reverse swing very quickly. And the South African captain, who's been done twice, let me add that
Hypocrite.
Massive hypocrite. Had called his mates at the television station and they put extra cameras, basically just to watch individual players. So they were aware of it and they just wanted to highlight it, and they highlighted it. It's a bit like the old golf days where someone breaks the rule and someone rings in and says, "I've just read the rule book, you can't do that." Same deal. And then obviously I think what destroyed the whole situation was that Cricket Australia didn't step in and say, "Hey, we've had a situation. We're going to assess it internally first, and then we'll get back to you tomorrow." Instead, they basically fed them to the wolves after the game and made them, accountable for something that they were going to have to lie about. Yeah. And that's what happened. And then after that, they're saying we've got a bad culture. When, I watched the interview with Steve Smith, and it was 6 months earlier when we were really struggling and we lost the Test match in Hobart, and Pat Howard, who I don't know the bloke personally, but from all reports was a terrible cricket operations manager and they should never have used him. And James Sullivan came into the dressing room and said to the boys, we don't pay you to play cricket, we pay you to win. So, that they talk about an inner culture. I don't think that Darren Lehmann...
Starts at the top.
Yeah, it starts at the top. And I know Darren Lehmann really well. Fantastic human being and plays the game as hard as anyone you'll ever meet. And I played against Buff. And he wouldn't have condoned that sort of behaviour. So, there was a couple of little messages in there that sort of said that Cricket Australia was starting to struggle financially, finding a really good sponsor. And that
crowds were down a little bit too.
Crowds are down.
Unless England are here, that there's a lot of empty
England,
seats.
South Africa, India. But I think too, we're in a decline. Every sport goes through it where, you just don't have the player base and the depth. Because at the moment, back in so much when I started playing cricket, you could have picked 3 Australian sides. I mean, the Australian A side was beating the Australian team, and you had people like Damien Martin coming through and Ricky Ponting, and a guy I played a lot of club cricket with, Greg Rowell, who bowled 150 k's an hour and was just a great competitor. We don't have that anymore. I watched some Shield cricket this year, and there's guys that are the first change bowler's lucky to bowl 130, and he's not swinging it. You can sort of... I don't understand why batsmen aren't scoring runs in first class cricket, because it's not happening either way.
Yeah.
From my point of view, that when Daniel Wade, not Daniel Wade, what's the keeper's name from Tassie? Matty Wade. is a leading run scorer in Shield cricket, there's a problem. And he was this year.
What about, the one that's probably forgotten out of the whole South African saga is Bancroft. Was he led astray? Will he play for Australia again? Where's he at?
He came out in his interview with Fox Sports and said that, he felt like he had to do it.
To fit in.
Now, is David Warner that big a bully that you feel like you can't say no to him?
But that comes back to what you just said about the culture. It was a win-at-all-cost mentality. He was a young bloke
surely
in the
he could have
side.
looked across the room and went,
Are you serious?
Is this the go, Wolf?
Yeah.
Like, I'm really taking sandpaper onto the field?
Again, he was a guy that I think in his own heart didn't think he deserved to be in the side to start with.
Yeah.
And I think he was like, I'm lucky to be here, so I'm going to do what I can to fit in. If that was me, I personally would have said no, and it would have been against my own.
You would have went with a bottle top.
Yeah,
we discussed that earlier.
I would have went with a chainsaw actually. But being a spinner, you get no benefit out of it. But it's left a sour taste in the public's eye. It's cricket's a long way off from earning their respect, and we've won a lot of games of cricket in the last 2 months.
Yeah,
we've actually started coming back.
We've been covering that the last couple of weeks, so we've been on a good run.
Good run,
and Smith and Warner making big runs in the IPL. So it should.
Finch has come to some form.
Finch is in quite.
So that was what we did. We've talked a bit about the awkwardness of them coming back into the dressing room. Where do they fit in the lineup?
Oh, I think you've got to have Steve Smith in the side regardless. I think he's a presence in the field. He's probably one of the best fielders in the world. It would have been a simple selection, Warner in for Finch.
Yeah.
Then you've got to find a new captain. But Finch, I can't believe he even played Test cricket. I think that's beyond where, it just shows the level of standard of Australian cricket. Finch has been around a long time, but he's never been a 4-day cricketer for Victoria. He struggled to make their side. I would have done a straight swap with Warner and Finch, but now Finch has gone and scored hundreds.
So Finch and Warner have got her open.
Can you hit me with a beer, big fella?
For its gold. Gold.
I think, and then the other one would have been Khawaja. Khawaja's not really someone, historically who scores very quickly. He would have been the guy that you probably, slide down the order or maybe not even the side and you bring in Smith. But you've now got to rethink that. It just comes back down to the powers that be. But I've got a feeling that that Jocelyn Langer is going to make them wait. And I think that they'll play
won't
against
play them in the first game?
No. I think they won't play in the first game, and I think they'll wait till they play one of the minnows and they'll give them a crack there and see how they go. Because the other thing is, I heard an interview with Steve Smith and he said, you know what, playing at that level, the guys do bowl a little bit quicker. It's a bit different to grade cricket in Sydney, and I know grade cricket in Sydney's struggling. That sharpness and the ability to react, which is considerably different, and you're going to be on wickets in England that are going to seam around against a duke ball that swings. He needs to be sharp. I think you'll find they'll play the practice games and that'll be
completely different to what he's India too. So different pitches.
Yeah, very different pitches.
Time will tell.
So going into your career a little bit, you're a 2-time Peter Burge Award winner. So that's kind of a big deal. And a couple of time runner-up, is that right?
Yeah. The Peter Burge, I suppose, for the people listening, is like the equivalent to the Brownlow or the Allen Border Medal or what's the other one for league, Dylan?
Dally M.
Dally M. So it's the equivalent to grade cricket's players. It's voted by the umpires. I fell short 3 times by a point. So
has anybody else won it twice?
Adam Dale. I don't know if you remember
Chippendale.
Chippendale. He played a few test matches for Australia. Swung it both ways. Quite a handy cricketer, actually.
He won it twice?
He won it twice.
So Big Red, couple of stats here I got from Nye's career. 11,000 first grade runs, 30 first grade centuries, and as you mentioned, 2-time Peter Burge medalist, 3-time runner-up. So arguably probably Brisbane's best grade cricketer we've had in many, many years.
Took 3 wickets in a Ford Ranger Cup final, all-rounder.
Yeah. So before that, I suppose probably one of your highlights was your debut game for the Bulls, 2004.
Yeah,
I think Sydney Cricket Ground.
Sydney Cricket Ground.
Made 100 on debut. I'll let Nicey tell more of the story, but 100 on debut against the likes of McGrath, both War brothers.
Both War brothers. Michael Bevan.
Michael Bevan, Nathan Bracken was another fast bowler. And I noticed on the score sheet 18 fours, so you don't like to run now, but you obviously didn't like running back then. Tell us about that day, and obviously you waited a while to debut for Queensland and made a stack of runs playing for West, but what do you remember about that day?
Yeah, it was interesting actually because I the season before I'd actually scored in just the 2-day games for my club side 950 runs, which hasn't been done since 1928, I think.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So we play club cricket. You play 2-day cricket, which is our equivalent to like 4-day cricket or the longer version. And you only play 11 games. So I actually averaged 98 that year and couldn't get into the Shield side.
That's massive.
So just on that, I've got some names here that were in the Queensland squad back then. You've got Stewie Law, Love, Hopes, Watson, Symonds, Perrin, Jimmy Marr. So, I mean, it's arguably Queensland's greatest ever.
So we talk about depth back in the day. That's
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
what
it's
you're
like the
talking
Queensland State of Origin
about.
side for the last 10 years. I mean,
It was
It's
a hard.
one
It was
of
a hard team to crack into. That's for sure. And it was back in those days. You had to perform and beat the door down for a long time, and wait for somebody to get injured. I only got my game because Jimmy Marr pulled a hamstring in the game before.
Yeah.
And I scored 950 runs in the grade season before, which has never been matched since. But there's only 2 other people that have done more, and they played 18 games in a season to get only 100 more runs than I did. So I averaged like 98 that year. And then I actually was a leading run scorer in the national second 11 comp. The year after, it's 650 runs at 50, I think, 55. And I only got my debut in the very last Shield game of the year through Jimmy getting injured. So we both, Queensland and New South Wales, Victoria were already in the final. They'd had a stellar year. We both had to win that game outright to get into the final the next week.
Yep.
I received my hat in the cap presentation, and it was actually quite funny because you sort of think of that moment as being really special, but the guy basically gave it to me and he said, don't stuff up. No pressure, but don't stuff up. And I sort of...
Who gave it to you?
Scott Presswich, who's a Queensland all-rounder. Getting ready to go out to bat, I was absolutely shitting myself, and I was sitting next to Stewie Law, who we actually played for the same junior club together. The only 2 people to come out of that club to play for Queensland. And he said to me, "How you going?" I said, "I'm not going too well, to be honest. I'm a bit nervous." McGrath was on at one end. Bracken had just finished a spell. Matt Nicholson, who'd played Test cricket that year, was coming on, and he was bowling rockets. And I was like, "Shit, I don't think I've faced anything that quick this year." And Stewie just said, "Oh mate, I wouldn't have picked you if I didn't think you were capable. It's no different than any other Shield game, no other club game."
Did the captain get to pick his team back then?
Yeah, back then they did
because
we had. I mean, mate, they didn't have to do many pickings. It was the team picked itself. It was just this instance where I had to step up. I remember walking out the bat and I was nervous, and Nicholson was bowling, and he the first ball that he bowled at me, I missed by a foot and a half. It literally had hit the keeper's gloves, which was Brad Haddon's gloves, before I'd even swung. And I just heard Mark Warrett's second slip, and he goes, "This won't take fucking long." And that was it. So I was like, okay, I better switch on here. And then after that, McGrath was down the other end, and he bowled me a juicy little half volley on leg stump, and I drove it down through mid on for 4, and that got me away. And I actually gave McGrath a bit of a touch up that day. It was pretty cool. I hit most of my boundaries off him.
It's a nice little memory.
Steve Waugh was a bit of a pest to me too. He never directly sledged at me, but he spoke around me all day.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like Tiger in the last group. You can't miss him. He's there, and he just had this aura and presence on the field. It was unbelievable.
So you guys went on to win that game, and then obviously the final was the next week.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I got dropped. I got dropped.
100 on debut and don't play the next week.
I actually got a wicket in that game too. We won that game under lights, which had never been done before, because Steve Ward said, "Look, we're here for the best of the game. We both need to win. They only needed 60-odd runs. They had a couple of wickets spare. The lights came on. It was dark. The umpires wanted to pull the game. Steve Ward basically came on the field and said, "No, sorry. Keep going." Stewie had an agreement with him and said, we'll bowl our slow bowls so you can still see it, and we'll just see what happens.
Yep.
And then I got a little call from Chris Hartley, who basically was making his first season in first class cricket, and he gave me a little, Nathan Bracken was batting, and I could see he was overbalancing a lot. So he sort of said, spear one down leg side. So I bowled an arm ball with a little signal from the keeper, and we ripped the stumps.
Chucked an arm ball.
Chucked the arm ball down. It was quick, mainly because I chucked it. And Hart's ripped off the bails, and we got him stumped. So I got a wicket as well, which was cool.
So you really were a short game specialist, though. That was where you really flourished. But it was just pre that Big Bash sort of 2020 takeoff. Do you look at what they're making now and scratch your head and think what could have been?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, we had two seasons of 2020 cricket, which was the KFC Big Bash, Queensland versus the rest of the states.
And it was still in the traditional Queensland Bulls.
Yeah,
there's no franchises.
No, that's right. And unfortunately, I didn't. We had a red hot side there too, and I didn't get a lot of opportunities. Even when I played one day cricket for Queensland, I think I actually came into bat once before the 40th over. And I came in once at the SCG, and I was 45 off 28 balls or something. There was a storm coming across, and I got an instruction to go and pick up the run rate, and I got caught on the fence. But prior to that, I didn't get a lot of chances because we just had such a great side. We won a lot of cricket back then.
I remember sort of just after I finished school, so around that period, we're going to the Gabba and cheering on Queensland in final. We went like 3 or 4 years in a row.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But I always got to bowl, which was good.
Yeah.
I love my bowling. I was a competitive bowler, and just got a lot out of it. And for me, if you look at 2020 now across the any sort of league, because there's a lot of leagues out there now, or even the World Cup, you watch who's going to be the most valuable bowler in each side. It'll be a spinner of some description. Right. It's a lot harder to hit a spinner over the fence when there's no pace in the ball.
A lot of 2020 games now start with the spinner bowls the first
opening.
Yep, and you can control things better with a spinner. I think you can if you've got a spinner, and Maxwell's okay. He bowls a lot of darts into the Yorker position, but if a side's got a good spinner like this Pakistan and even this West Indian, the leg spinner that came out here for the Big Bash, he's going to feature pretty heavily over there.
Is that why Lions back in the? Is that why Lions?
You'd have to. And English wickets traditionally, if it's a bit wet, they turn straight away. So why not? And they're slower.
Yeah.
So again, slow bowler on a slow wicket, they're gonna, you're gonna get the best value out of it.
So Errol, let's go back to the prime of your career. Obviously, with those names we've mentioned in the Queensland side, and obviously I know the answer to this, but were there any opportunities to go and play in another state to play more Shield cricket? I mean, I know there's guys have done it before.
Yeah,
look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of got to a point in my career where I loved playing the longer version of the game as well, and I actually, to be honest, I think it fitted me just as well. I got a phone call from Darren Lehman when he was still playing. He was coach, captain sort of South Australia, and he rang me and he sort of said, Nye, I think, you're a waste up there. We'd like to get you down to South Australia. There's a really good opportunity. You could bat 3 for us here. We're looking for a player like yourself, good in the field. We need a second spinning option. I'd love for you to consider coming down. We'd offer you a contract. I was like, geez, it's a big decision, because back then, if you weren't on a really good contract, it wasn't a lot of money to make a living out of it.
And you'd have to live in Adelaide.
I'd have to live in Dylan's hometown.
Well, to be fair, you're a very parochial Queenslander too.
Yeah, absolutely. Very passionate Queenslander. But I got a phone call 2 weeks later from Boof saying, look, I've had a bit of an issue with the board here in South Australia, and they wanted to stick in-house. And I was ready to move. I'd basically made the decision I was going to go. To be playing under Boof, I thought would be special. 1 season under him, and then he said, I'll be coaching after that, and I'd like you to captain the side. He rang me up and he said, look, they're not going to let this through. We'd have to reassess. But he had a major falling out. Apparently the committee or the board in South Australia at the time were about average age was 93. So they didn't like those sorts of decisions. And he said, look, stay up there. We'll reassess next year when I'm coaching. But I'm almost certain you'll start in the side for Queensland, bat 5 in all forms, and, bowl, and you'll have a really integral part of the team. And then 2 weeks after that, Andrew Symonds got vanquished back to Queensland cricket, which he and I were obviously a very similar cricketer. Obviously, he's a lot better, but I filled in that spot for him, really, really well. And the rest is history because he never got picked for Australia again. And Michael Clark made sure that he didn't. And then for me,
Right,
it was
what juice you got there? There's a lot of speculation that goes on amongst that whole saga.
well, look, Roy was old school. I'd actually never trained or played cricket. I was lucky to play with a few blokes. Greg Rowell was amazing, one of the most amazing competitors I've ever played with. Andy Bickle. You could throw the ball at Andy Bickle when a team was 2 for 350 and he would give you, it's 40 degrees and it's day 4. He would give you 100% every time and trained really hard. Andrew Symonds, everything at training was competitive.
Yeah.
And he'd suck you into this vortex of, getting into this stoush at training, whether it was, we'd play touch football in the morning and he'd be dropping shoulders into people. In fact, Lee Castledine missed 2 Shield games because he propped a rib. That was all off Andrew Symonds thinking he was...
That's Michael Jordan-esque. They talk about Jordan and the competitor that he used to harass his own teammates and just like trash talk them at training to the point where it messed with their heads. Like him and Scottie Pippen were like a great duo, but they don't like each other, do they?
I'm not sure. That's an interesting one. But from an Andrew Symonds point of view, he was just a lethal trainer, and he liked to play. His words were play hard, party hard. You always got to celebrate a win, no matter what. And they don't do it anymore.
So you talk about him training hard. That's not the story that everyone was sold. That he comes off as the larrikin and not interested, and he's going fishing instead of turning up to meetings. But that's a different side of it. Like a competitor, fierce competitor, trained hard, but just thought you should be enjoying yourself at the same time.
I think and I'll paint this picture for you, and I won't go into it anymore. Roy rang me up one day because I lived down the coast here, and we were good mates. So he was pretty vocal about me not getting picked, even when he was back in the side. We went pigging at an old place where Dylan and I used to work, Gainsborough Greens, at 7 o'clock in the morning, and Roy had a fishing box in the back full of 4X gold, and Roy used to fill up 2-litre milk bottles full of water and freeze them. Yeah. And then he'd just get an axe and he'd chop it up, and then he'd pre-prep the carton the night before. I've never, ever had a beer at the perfect temperature like Roy used to provide them. We would go pigging in the morning.
Note that down for next week. Have a look what's in there.
Probably need a bit more ice in here, lads. But this was before training one day. Roy pretty much got through most of that carton, and that afternoon we had to go to training. But he was more interested in chasing pigs and drinking 4X with no shoes on, and his wife beater and a pair of Broncos training shorts.
That's pretty cool.
So one more question, then obviously you've heard me say it during the show, but Errol, how'd the nickname Errol come about? That was from Roy, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were doing a fielding drill one day, and I don't mind...
Because you used to wear it on the back of your shirt there when they brought the names.
Yeah, so we were doing a fielding drill one day, and I got stuck into Roy because Roy's not the smartest. We had a wall on the dressing room, in the dressing room. This wall that had Royisms. So things like the coach would go, right, boys, you need to give your RSVPs for the function on Friday, and Roy would be like, I'm sick of coach having to use our time in the thing for his RSPCAs. Now this is just not right. So people are like, RSPCAs, mate. He goes, yeah, for your RSPCAs. No, it's RSVP, mate. And he's like, oh, whatever. And I remember sitting with him at the Gabba one day, and he's reading it was like a Dolly Doctor or something, some chick's magazine, and he says, oh, what do you do when you have a row with your missus? And I said, it was sort of 5 key points of having a row with your missus. I said, what? He goes, it's a row, mate. It's a row. And he's like, what's that? Oh, right, okay. Cheers, Nicey. But yeah, we're having a fielding drill one day, and he started calling me Errol, and I'm like, mate, what do you call me Errol for? And he goes, you look like Errol Flynn. And I'm like, really? Anyway, people heard it, and then it just stuck. It's one of the most stupidest, nicknames. And now all my mates call me that. So I've
Flynn.
In like Flynn.
Right, we're gonna throw to our science up. We're run out of time tonight. We're gonna go to our science update, and then we're gonna hit you with 3 questions.
Okay.
So, Timmy, I went a bit early on this picture. Sorry, I distracted people. But can you tell us what's going on?
Looks like a stain on the screen there. What do you got there, mate?
It's the Eye of Saruman, isn't it, from Lord of the Rings or not? What is it?
That is a black hole.
What?
Massive news this week. Huge news. So basically, mid last year, there's a team called that ran actually it was a group of 200 scientists together.
Stay with us, Dylan. Don't fall asleep.
Dylan, I can see. They basically formed an alliance and they called it the Event Horizon Telescope. So it was a collaboration of telescopes around the Earth. So basically, the problem in the past has been they've known where these black holes are, and they've actually been able to, I suppose, visualise the effects that gravity's had on stars around the black holes. But due to the size, and just to give you an idea, whilst that is absolutely massive, that black hole, it's I suppose what they've achieved is the equivalent of us seeing something the size of an orange on the moon. So the only way they're able to achieve this is by actually having a telescope or a radio telescope the size of Earth. So if you can picture, by having these radio telescopes around Earth, they've achieved this amazing feat. And what you're seeing on the screen is something that basically Einstein predicted or theorised. So it's exactly, you're seeing photons of light spinning around a black hole, and what you actually see is the black hole itself doesn't have a size, but the size that they measure is what's called the Event Horizon, hence the Event Horizon Telescope. So what you're actually looking at is the point beyond where light can no longer actually escape.
The Event Horizon is as you go through the hole and into the abyss.
That's correct. So the black hole itself actually doesn't have a size.
And they're saying that there's one of these at the centre of each galaxy, and that's why you
Most
get that
galaxies.
swirling look when you see a picture of a galaxy.
Most
like
galaxies will have this. So it's
Timmy,
absolutely
I think
massive.
we've lost them.
We've lost Dylan.
Straight
I
over
like
their
how
head.
it's on the other side.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So what I mean,
It's a
what
wormhole.
you've said is
It's
exactly
another,
right.
Another
Is there
universe on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, they don't know. I mean, it's once it goes beyond the event horizon is where basically all our knowledge
Good.
stops.
I saw that movie. It's not bad. Righto. What are we? You got any more questions?
Three questions for Nosey.
So we want to make this a bit of a tradition. Thank you for being our first in-studio guest. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to hit you with three questions. Rapid fire, if you know, think, you know, first thing that comes to mind. Your favourite bar that you've had a drink in the world?
There's a rooftop bar in New York called Esco or something. I can't remember the exact name, but it basically looked over the Hudson River and down the left-hand side of New York. Was pretty cool.
Cheap beers there?
$18 for a Coke, basically. And then I think a bourbon was $35. Which was
Jeez.
good. I had one drink.
Next one, favourite athlete of all time?
Michael Jordan, hands down.
MJ.
Yeah. Grew up, idol, love him.
Last one. If you could have, I've always wanted to ask this question. I know it's a bit of a cliche one, but I've always liked it. If you could have any four people over for a barbecue out of history, so alive or dead, who do you invite and what are you cooking for them?
Well, first of all, I'd cook them a ribeye on the bone.
Nice.
There'd be,
I'm coming.
Bugs, bit of a surf and turf sort of
Yeah,
theme.
I like it. I'm in.
Calamari, some fresh calamari grilled, not any of this other crap, but it has to be grilled.
Who's cooking it?
Oh, I know a couple of good cooks. It ain't you, Dylan. Actually, Dylan is a very good cook, must say. Yeah, there'd be a bit of red wine too. Probably a stogie for dessert, you know, just to sit down and watch a bit of sport.
I was going to get you one, but just due to the regulations here in the studio, we couldn't
Yeah.
smoke them today, so I apologise for
Yeah,
that, but maybe next
Thank
time.
Michael Jordan for that. I just thought it looked cool back when I was a kid and
Sitting there with the-
stuck.
So obviously Jordan
Yeah.
will be coming to the barbecue.
Yeah, Jordan. I think Nelson Mandela would come.
Huge.
I reckon
one.
he'd be
There you
a big one. They'd all be athletes, I think. I'd like to have a chat to Greg Norman, see what he's got happening. But the last one, my goodness, I think.
Roy.
Nah, I've had plenty of beers and banter with Roy. I'd probably get my grandpa back from the grave, I reckon, just so he could have a bit of a
Yeah, good one.
That's good.
mingle around with the boys. He'd
I
love
like
that.
it. Righto. On that note, cheers, boys.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Daryl.
Awesome.
Welcome back
Thanks.
anytime.
It's Timmy.
Thanks, Timmy. Righto, that wraps up episode 4. What a doozy.
Collingwood minus 9.5. Thursday night.
So cheer them on. I don't know if I can cheer for Collingwood. The
Not
boss,
easy.
The boss will be happy. Obviously, you can find us on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Beers and Banter. Thanks for love, people, and keep sharing. Cheers.
Hooroo.
Cheers.